also wrote a second book that was absolutely shocking to read, called Cult Insanity. It took in Ervil LeBaron's life, the murders that he had committed, and all in the name of God. The letters he wrote out threatening the world the way Warren Jeffs is doing it today, threatening to destroy the earth because he's the power of God. Even sent these letters to very powerful people in our country.
President of the United States, the head of the Mormon Church.
And he sent letters to very powerful people in political places. Isn't it a fact that he was not an isolated incident? Ervil LeBaron's cult in his own church was not the only section claiming and blaming Mormonism that believed in blood atonement.
Well, I've heard people say, oh, that was just an isolated deal. Ervil just did that. The LeBarons carried it out. It had nothing to do with anybody else. But that is not true. They had the Lafferty brothers who were Mormons, and they believed in this, and they actually went and murdered their sister-in-law, slit her throat, and she had a little baby standing up in the crib, and they went and slit its throat too because it was going to grow up to be wicked like she was. So they killed them both in order to save them, and they're spending life terms in prison in Utah now. And also back in I think it was Iowa, I'm not sure, but I think it's where, or Ohio, in Ohio, the Lundgren, his name was Jeff Lundgren, he was from the reorganized LDS church, and he had 15 or so followers that looked at him as a god, and he had them help him, and they killed a family of 5 and blood atoned them, took them out in the barn and dug holes out there and let them out one by one, and murdered them and threw them in a pit and covered them up out in the barn because they were rebellious. And so it has been carried on, and I have heard from 2 or 3 good sources that even the FLDS, in their temple that they have down in Texas, that they actually had a couple of men lined up that had offered their lives to have their throats cut to pay for their sins that they might be exalted. And that's one of the reasons why they built the temple.
I have information that they also had a furnace in that temple that would burn a bull to the point you couldn't recognize its DNA. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't.
The guy that built it actually was so upset about it that he reported it to the Texas Rangers and whatnot when they were investigating those cases.
Oh, nice.
That's where the information came from. Interesting concept. Even so, with blood atonement being a basic part of the religion, everybody wants to blame Mormonism, but it isn't Mormonism, and here's why it isn't. Worldwide polygamous behavior is a narcissistic behavior that remains the same. For example, look at Islam. There are radical Islams that have honor killings. We read about them all the time. Last month, there was a headline in the Canadian paper that a father murdered his second wife and his 3 daughters and made his first wife and his son help him because they dressed American and behaved American and disobeyed him and dishonored him. It was an honor killing. Before that, there was a doctor, Islamic, slit his wife's throat because she wanted a divorce. All in the name of God. I hate to be disrespectful. However, it seems to me that when you got a God so mean, the devil's on unemployment and can only get a part-time job as a scapegoat, you don't need any devil. You're worshiping one. Are my wires crossed here?
Well, I don't believe that God is that abusive and God wants her throats cut or anything else. And it's just like I was 5 generations of polygamy. It's all I ever knew and we grew up with. And they would actually tell us, Irene, if you don't live polygamy, you're going to let your ancestors down. Can you imagine how they're going to feel someday when you have to face them and you tell them that you didn't want to sacrifice and live the laws that they lived? And so I, out of fear ended up going into polygamy and becoming a second wife. I lived polygamy for 28 years. And the thing of it is that I came to find out that I am responsible for my actions. I cannot say that they made me do it. So I was coerced, I lived in fear, there were a lot of things that helped me do it, but I made the choice to get into polygamy. I made the choice to let a man abuse me and and by having all these children when I didn't even have, my health wasn't up to it and whatnot. But I made that choice. And the time comes when every one of us as women have to realize that we control our lives, that no man can control our lives. And, you know, that's where the empowerment comes in. We are never empowered, and we can't take a hold of the reins of our own lives until we feel like we are worthy. And they have snuffed that out from the time we are born. Only the men were worthy. They're going to become gods. And we better just shape up and help them do that. And that's why women lose the essence of who they truly are. And the greatest thing, I think the only way that women are ever going to get out of polygamy is to learn to love themselves. Because when we love ourselves, we will not allow abuse in any way, shape, or form.
But it takes a great deal of courage for a woman to stand up and say, I will not give up my mind, my body, my intelligence, my children's lives in slavery to make someone else a god, especially if you're going to kill me. It takes a lot of courage to reach that point. And I can see why women stand up, back, and support it, because they don't know how to survive to get out.
Well, when you have no job skills and you're saddled with a dozen or more children, you have no way of supporting yourself. A lot of these women didn't even know how to drive. I myself did not get a driver's license until I was 40 years old. And so you're stuck there. And the thing of it is, people say, oh, you could have got out, someone would have helped you. How can you get out when your mother and your father, all your brothers and sisters, and everybody else is in it? And if you leave, you know darn well that you will be destroyed. And it's not just by words only. You may be hunted down like Herbal did and actually kill somebody for leaving. The fear is so great that you are terrorized. I myself had 9 nieces and nephews and 1 first cousin that committed suicide. Now, is that happiness? Does that show that we have been living here in joy and happiness in these beautiful little groups?
No, but it's an out.
Well, it is an out, and it's a permanent out.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is that to think that that could happen, that all these suicides and these nervous breakdowns and all these things happen, and they don't do anything about it. They just say, oh, she lost her mind, let's put her away, let's take her children away and give them to another wife. You know, she wasn't worthy because she lost her mind.
I have talked to a lot of polygamist women that have had nervous breakdowns. And I have also talked to men, and they all blame the women. They all say they were emotionally sick and lesser human beings and spiritually condemned, and all blame the women. And yet, with each case that I've talked to, the amount of stress put on that woman before she finally broke was beyond belief. Beyond belief. Have you seen cases like that, Irene?
I've absolutely seen several cases of women that have had nervous breakdowns. And I myself had a nervous breakdown, and I'm not too proud to say so. And the reason why I want people to know is I want people to know how low you can get, how you can lose that sense of yourself, and you can rally and come back. It is hard. Like you say, it's one of the hardest things in the world when it's all you've known. You know no other thing. We were taught that the outside world was going to kill us. They were going to destroy us. We have no way. Our parents can't help it. If they do, they will be excommunicated. Or they might take the wives of the father away because he helped him and give them to another man. They'll replace them with another family. And so nobody dares speak up. I know people that have left groups that could never even phone their families because it would put their families in jeopardy. They couldn't even get a hold of them.
Well, isolation is a big tool for control. If they isolate them and don't let them know anything except the information they spoon feed them, he who controls information controls behavior.
Exactly.
So isolation is a hallmark of these cults. Absolutely. They go off and they find a little place out in the middle of the boonies and they start their own town, and that gives them more power over their people. And it also puts them in a position where they're eligible for government funds, because now they've incorporated into a town and they're eligible for money for roads, schools, post offices, and all the welfare for all those illegitimate children that they keep creating. So it's a huge moneymaker as well as control.
Absolutely.
As far as the nervous breakdowns are concerned, I've talked to several women that were denied medical attention when they had toxemia, when they were pregnant, when they were literally in danger of losing their lives. Some of their friends and some of them had lost their baby's life without medical attention. And these women were told, if you die, it's the will of the Lord. You will not get medical attention. And that's very common in these cults, isn't it?
Absolutely. We were taught to not trust doctors, to stay away from them, that they were, they were no good. I myself had toxemia, and I had my first baby died. He just lived 20 minutes, and it's a miracle that I didn't die. I was so sick, and sick for a long time afterward. I begged to go to the doctor, but they said, oh no, you stay home and drink a few little herbal teas and you're going to be all right,
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, and even when I had my nervous breakdown, I was rushed into a hospital in San Diego. One of my girlfriends took me in there. I was having panic attacks, and I went in there, and they wanted to send me from Monday till Friday through a little school, and anyway, to help me out of it emotionally. But what did my husband do? Oh no. He took me back to Mexico, isolation again, put me back there because he didn't want anybody to know that he had a wife that had cracked up. And what a shame it would be if people knew that,
that you couldn't take the abuse.
That I couldn't take it, exactly. And so they took me right back there and put me in it, and I had to come out of it myself. It took me a long, long time to be able to think for myself and anyway, to come back. But nobody will know the heartache and the pain that these women go through. And it's frightening, and yet they do it because they do not know how to get out and care for themselves. And the law, this is it among these people. Every polygamous group will tell you that the children belong to the man. Do you understand that? The men are the fathers, and you don't take those children. They are part of his kingdom. Now, you can leave anytime you want. Door's right there. You can walk out anytime. But you're going to leave those kids behind you. What woman in her right mind would walk off and leave the only thing that ever gave her a purpose and a reason to get out of bed in the morning? With those little children. It was the only thing that kept her going. And yet they would take them away. I've seen people that have lost their children. They've been put in insane asylums and told that they were crazy. Well, the men went on, gathering more wives, getting more, and bearing more children. And it's more suffrage for women and children. Take the religion away. I can see why some people give up religion. That you take it away. They're doing it not because of religion. They're doing it because they've been taught to be abusers by the other generations. It's a pattern that they follow. Excuse me, but they do. I've been to 5 generations in, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah, well, because they believe that being abusive and controlling is what makes them a god. That's their god is cruel. Stop and look. They're patterning themselves after their god. They believe in a god that. Is a devilish God. It's amazing the women that have had nervous breakdowns stop and tell me that in some cases they are the only wife that's home taking care of from 18 to 30 children while the other wives are out working for minimum wage, up with babies all night, new babies, trying to take care of these children. And the average individual can't take care of 6 kids 24/7 without thinking they're going to scream. How in the world do they survive with the lack of sleep, breastfeeding babies, and all those little children that they have to worry about feeding, keeping out of trouble, and keeping safe? One woman told me that was not only the case, she had to hide the children inside because where they were renting, they were supposed to be a family of 6. Can you believe it?
Oh my golly. Well, as far as taking care of children, I did that myself. I took care of more than 20 children all by myself. We were not on welfare. We were living in Mexico. We had very, very poor conditions. We barely survived on beans and rice. I mean, it was really sad, and second-hand clothes that we were grateful to have, but that's what we had. And I was washing on a wringer washer, and when that broke, it was a scrub board. That I was to take care of those children and feed those children, be up with them night and day and have it, and I could not do it. But oh no, I was told that, oh yes you can, I believe in you, and you've got what it takes, and you round up your shoulders and you take this, you know. And they promised me a prize that if you take care of these kids, you're going to be able to go to heaven and be a mother and have children for eternity and have all these kids. Well, all of a sudden I realized that I didn't have to go to be sent to hell. I was already in it. I mean, what do you want to die and go to the same situation with?
And weren't you pregnant or lactating at the same time all this was going on? Because you did that continually as a mother.
I had 13 children by the time I was 34. Now you guess it. Was I pregnant
yes,
all the time?
Yes, all the time you were tending all these other children, you were pregnant or breastfeeding
Exactly.
a baby and had a little baby up at night of your own.
Exactly, exactly.
And this is the way they live. I have been told that in Colorado City, the men punished their women by taking them to the insane asylum and locking them up because even the police were FLDS. They actually put them in the insane asylum as a punishment and told them they would never get out or never have their children. And this is what they did. If they didn't drive them crazy, they just hung a label of crazy on them and locked them up.
It's sad. Women weren't, they were abused is all I can say.
In the name of God.
In the
or
name
religion.
of God. Religion.
Irene, I want to thank you for enlightening people about what goes on in so many of these cults. And I would also like to say this. It is not the cult or the name of the religion that creates the problem. It's the narcissistic behavior that clothes itself in the name of religion to protect itself. Because the narcissistic behavior is prevalent in any name, every name, in religion, in no religion, all over the world. Polygamous behavior is the same in Africa, in India, in Islamic nations, Jewish polygamists, FLDS polygamists. Each and every adult is responsible for their own behavior. Religion is never justified as an excuse for a violation of human rights. There is no right way to make people suffer. Irene Soencer, New York Times best-selling author. Thank you, Irene, so much. It's been so delightful to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.